Hi, my name is Wenli Lim, and I'm the Chief Impact Officer at Flourish DX and host of this podcast. The purpose of this podcast is for conversations and practical guidance from subject matter experts, service providers, innovative tech platforms, and employers in the region. Taking a shared approach to workplace mental health is imperative. So not just as individuals, but as employers, colleagues, and the broader community to create mentally healthy workplaces so that we can prevent suffering and promote human flourishing. We're very excited today to have a very special guest, Sha-En Yeo, founder of Happiness Scientist. Welcome, Sha-En.
Hi, Wen. Thank you so much for having me.
No problems. We were just talking about Chinese New Year and the fact that we're both wearing red. So what's your usual thing for this time of the year?
We get into preparation mode, spring cleaning, getting clothes. But this year I decided that I'm not going to buy new clothes. I'm going to save the earth and try to find clothes that I haven't worn for a long time. And nobody remembers that they're old clothes, so they'll just appear new.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. It's like, as much as we want new things and all that, but it's like, environmentally, we're just adding to, the degradation and just unnecessary. So recycling is a great idea this season.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, even your company name, Happiness Scientist, I think just even saying that just makes people feel happy. So, tell us a bit about Happiness Scientist and your career and journey to date.
Yeah, well, happiness scientists, people are always very intrigued, like, what do you do? And I guess it comes from my background in positive psychology. I went overseas to the University of Pennsylvania to do a master's in positive psychology about 11 years ago. And that was when my mind was blown, that concepts like resilience and optimism can actually be taught, can actually be learned. And there's a whole body of science that supports the practice of it. And, I think one of the things I took away from that was if we consciously know what these things are and intentionally add these strategies or interventions into our life, then we can be in charge of making our life happier. And that's why I named the company Happiness Scientists. It is really using the science of happiness to enable individuals like you and I, companies, societies, communities to thrive.
Yeah, that's really cool. And so what was it like? I mean, before that, you were in the education sector. And so how did you do that pivot? What made you go, okay, you know what, I'm going to study positive psychology?
I guess, as I'm teaching, I realized that as a teacher, I'm not just there to teach them English, math, and all the subjects, and I encountered so many students who were brilliant in their academics. But when it came to recovering from failure, learning how to navigate friendships, even having difficult family environments that they were in, day out, but not having the skills and strategies to face all of that, it made me question what my role as a teacher was. Was it just to teach them subjects so that they can get out of there and do well? Or was it to also teach them skills to become a flourishing human being? And I guess questions led me to try to find answers. And I found the answers in the field of positive psychology with Dr. Martin Seligman's book, Learned Optimism, right? And because to me, it's like, if I want to bring it to my students, I first got to know what it is. I first got to practice what it is. And so I guess it was that book that I started practicing it on myself. And it was just a mind-blowing experience because, I didn't used to be all sunshiny and rainbow like now. I used to be a pessimist. And, when things go wrong, I always go to the worst case scenario. But because of that book, which is called Learned Optimism, I actually was able to now call myself a reformed optimist. I'm able to use those strategies and step by step be able to look at certain situations and not go to the worst case scenario as I used to.
That would have been a very interesting process. And how long do you think it took for you to be a learned optimist?
Well, I think I would say that I actually seriously started practicing it maybe more than 15 years ago. And I did it consciously, maybe in the first year of actually doing it, every single day, writing in my journal, what is this thought? What is the belief behind the thought? And can I reframe that? Can I change that? And I think it was after a year that I started to feel the effects, that it wasn't my natural state to then go to the worst case scenario anymore. When I had challenges in my life, I didn't think that it was all about me. I didn't personalize so much, but I started to ask different questions like, what else could it be? What evidence is there to say that I'm a loser, for example? I would think a lot like that in the past. I think after that 1 year, I realized, wow, if it works for me, imagine what it could do for students.
Yeah. And And I mean, this skill would be so important in the last couple of years as well. And just before we started recording, you were saying that you did so many podcasts and so many speaking engagements in 2020.
Yes.
So how did you find bringing that message across to people in the midst of a very, very difficult year?
I think people were ready. I would say that if this happened 5 years ago and you asked me to do a lot of podcasts, it would be like nobody would really be really interested. It was almost as if happiness or learning to flourish or thrive is like a bonus. Like we won't think about it unless it's absolutely necessary. But I think the pandemic brought to the front that, hey, if we don't take care of ourselves and we don't put those foundations in place for our own mental health, nobody is actually actively going to do it for you, right? And if we don't, then everything around us crumbles, isn't it? I met so many people on these webinars who would privately message me and say that I'm really struggling. I don't know what to do. But on the upfront, they looked happy and they looked fine. And so nobody reached out to them. And yet inside they were like, torn. I don't know what to do with this thing. So I feel like the pandemic has given us that opportunity to begin this conversation around mental wellness, mental health. And for people to say, yeah, I'm going to do this for myself,
So interesting. And we were previously also talking about, impact and how, that's what got you to start working with corporates and your realization that actually the workplace was such a big contributing factor towards people's mental health.
Yes.
So can you, expand more on that?
Yeah, I think it was just trying to figure out why. Okay, so I worked a lot with teachers, I worked a lot with parents, and very often we see every part of the system was stressed out. The parents were stressed, the students were stressed, the teachers were stressed, and I started asking this question: why is this happening? Like, where is that issue, and how can I deal with that issue? Where is the stress coming from? And I realized that instead of seeing children as problem children, it was because parents brought back all the stress and frustration from the workplace, long hours, demanding bosses sometimes, or just the pace of change was so quick that they felt under pressure to deliver. And then they brought all of that home. And so all it needed was just one little trigger from the child, and there would be like a volcanic explosion at home. And it was just this vicious cycle that was going round and round. And so I told myself, well, if the source of the issue, or rather if parents are feeling the stress in the workplace, then surely we can bring intervention and support into the workplace, right? And that's kind of got me into the foray into the corporate world.
Yeah. And so what has that been like, trying to, kind of do this work within the corporate setting?
Yeah, I mean, there's been definitely more demand and interest over the last 2 years, primarily because, as we mentioned, mental health discussions have been brought to the fore. And it takes certain kinds of companies who recognize, right, that if mental health is not put in place, then the employees are not able to function as well as they normally do. And it's not just about them seeing them as a number, it's seeing them as human beings who have emotions, who have struggles, who have joys, who have moments to celebrate, and being able to create an environment that supports all of the person, not just the work side of the person, right? So if someone is struggling with a family issue at home, then can they create the environment within the workplace that is supportive? It could be giving time off, it could be flexibility in terms of heading back to attend to the children, or even somebody who's looking after elderly parents who perhaps has dementia. I think, as a workplace, if we can offer that level of flexibility and understanding, then what you have is an employee who is appreciative, right? Who is then willing to say, when I come back, I'm going to come back doubly hard because I know that this company actually values me. So you're sending a very strong message, and it isn't just about being soft, like, oh, we need to be soft and look after. There's always this myth, right, that if we go to mental health, that we are giving in, we're being permissive. But recognize that human beings have basic needs, and being able to meet this is, to me, a basic need, right?
Yeah. I think part of it might actually, and I'm checking with you actually, is it that, people have gone through, like, winding back 20 years ago, and potentially, the leaders, they themselves had to suffer in a way that they had to put a lot of things aside, and it was just demanding. And now they're like, you know what, if I can go through it, you can go through it. And so that's that kind of thing of just oh, everyone's got it easy now, but I had to go
Mm.
through so much. And it's true. I think we do have to recognize that it was so hard. They had to put their other part of themselves, check it out the door when they came into work. It doesn't matter what else is going on at home. There was no sympathy or even care or even a question asked. Do you see that in your work? And, kind of what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I have tons of thoughts on that. I do think that paying attention to generational differences is really important, but they shouldn't guide the narrative of how we live today. For example, yes, we did work. I mean, my parents perhaps worked really hard, but that was because at the time the general theme was survival. Because basic needs like housing, sometimes for some people, food, they just had to meet all this, and therefore there was no bandwidth, I suppose, or no, what is the word? Yeah, you don't have that opportunity to think about all these extra things. It was just, okay, I'm going to put food on the table. My children need to go to school. I need to pay the school fees, and that was their mentality and mindset. But I think if we fast forward to now, children are living. We are living in a time where, I wouldn't say all around the world, but in many countries, basic needs are no longer as top priority. For some regions, yes. For some regions, no. And so for the regions that are not, then what do they focus on, right? It now becomes the self-actualization needs, if you think about Maslow's hierarchy, right? Tending to belonging needs, tending to purpose, self-actualization. And therefore, this conversation surrounding the whole person has become more front and center than it used to, right?
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean we're dismissing what the previous generation went through in terms of hard work, right? Hard work is still valued, hard work is still necessary, but we've got to ask the question now: at what cost? What is the cost of valuing only hard work above everything else to you as a human being, to your employees and your team, which then makes up your organization? Isn't
Yeah.
there a way in which we can find an end instead of it being either or?
Great thoughts on that. So I'm assuming you're going to meet corporates and clients of all different types. And
Yeah.
so I guess what are you seeing in terms of what are the biggest needs out on the ground that you're hearing and being asked to work on?
Yeah, and I think if we look at any organization, we want to look at it at different levels, right? We have the staff on the ground, the front line, the service, and they would need strategies on how to, cope with overwhelm, cope with the pressure, cope with the stress. Burnout is on the rise. How do you cope with that exhaustion while still trying to meet your own targets, right? Or still trying to keep your job, for example, right? So we do need to give them handles, but giving them handles to manage themselves is only part of it. If we go to the next level, we talk about the managers and the teams, then how can managers and teams be equipped with the knowledge and the skills to be able to have conversations to find out how their team's doing, right? To be able to create an environment that's safe enough so that they can speak up and share what might be going on professionally or personally, right? And then as I mentioned earlier, how do you create that environment where it is, people enjoy coming to work? And if, let's say, enjoyment seems too far-fetched at the moment, at least they can feel connected to what they're doing, that there's some kind of relevance and meaning in the work that they're doing, and it isn't just coming in for a paycheck or to tick a box, right? And then if we move up the levels, we talk about the senior management or the CEOs. Then at the leadership level, it's about messaging, it's about communicating, it's about role modeling, walking the talk, and maybe even developing policies across the company, and then compensation and benefits that align with that, right? For example, I know of a company that decided that, once every 3 months or once every 2 months, they're going to have a mandatory day off, for the employees. And I think that's useful, because if you left it to the individual employees' volition, they would want to take it, but they're afraid of what it would look like, what they would look like to their bosses, right? But if it's mandated, then everybody feels like, we're all doing it together. We're in this together. And that's really important, I think, when you're building culture, right?
Yeah. Wow. Fascinating. And I like how you've like built, you've kind of carved it out into different levels, right? And
Yeah.
I think previously we were also talking about, what's your ideal client? I mean, in terms of, you have X amount of hours a day, and you would love to work with organizations that are really going to have a long-term impact. So, the work that you do is really going to bring about systemic change and long-term change. So
Mm.
what would that be? I mean, like what's kind of like the bed, like, we're talking about gardening. What's the soil or the conditions that you would love to work in? And that would be like, your poster client that it's like, yes, this is really possible. And I'm, really contributing to great change.
Oh, this is like a dream question.
Yeah.
Well, I would say, to me, it's, having the person right at the top who believes that this is important and not just a cursory initiative just in response to the pandemic. Beyond the pandemic, there's the long tail of mental health that we need to look out for. And even if it's not the pandemic, there are going to be other challenges, right? I mean, business is dynamic, the environment changes so quickly. You have new competitors, for example. A business has to stay agile. But how do you stay agile when you have a workforce that's not mentally healthy? Right. So I think having a leader that truly believes in it and is willing to invest the time, energy, and resources, whatever that means, whether it is empowering the people, whether is it finding fellow collaborators who can come in to walk the same talk and expand together, whether is it in your messaging. I think as a leader, your messaging has to be aligned. You can't just say one thing and do the other. So I think that would be where I would start with the leadership. And then, of course, if you have a company whose mission, vision, and values are already aligned with this concept of being a human-centered, a whole person environment, which believes in elevating people who come into the workplace so that they grow and learn, but at the same time know how to really find purpose and connection to themselves, to the people in their lives, then absolutely that would be the ideal client. When I was just thinking about this concept of burnout this morning, and I was like, what is the opposite of burnout? And it came
Interesting.
to me,
Yeah.
yeah, I was going for my morning walk, which is where I get most of my inspiration. And the answer came to me is that it's light up, right? Burnout means your flame has fizzled. But light up means somebody comes in and they're lit up from within. They enjoy what they're doing. They feel connected to the purpose. They know that their boss and their boss's boss has their back and they can do great work. And so they feel lit up. They're elevated, right? As opposed to burnout, which is like fizzled.
Yeah.
And I think that would be my ideal client. If you believe
Yeah.
in that, and let's work together,
Oh, great. Well, shout out to anyone who knows organizations and leaders like that. Because I think one of the things we do also want to highlight on this podcast is just great, good news stories that it is possible. And there are people and leaders who really do care and that the change can happen. I think now, people are still, trying to figure it out, taking baby steps and trying to, come up with a strategy or just figure out how to navigate. But I think the more that we highlight, great stories. And so we would love to have you back at a later date. We're January 2022. And so maybe, 6 months time, 12 months time, it'd be great to just get our, guests back and go, how's the year been? And what have you seen since we spoke? And just to share, even if it's small wins, sometimes I feel it needs to be, it sometimes needs to be like a big thing, but actually it's the little things that really make a difference.
Yeah.
And then people can just kind of grab hold onto that and just go, okay, you know what? I can implement that, or I can
Yeah,
start with
absolutely.
this. Yeah.
Yeah. And it just takes one person to start something, right? To start something, to advocate for it, to keep persevering. And I think people who resonate would generally would find them, right? And then from one, it can become two, and two become three. So I mean, if
Yeah.
you're listening to this and you are in your company, you say, hey, I've got an idea. Let's try it out, and you can start with your team, within your small group, and then share the good results, like you say, small wins, small progress, and then maybe another teammate adopt it, and then maybe another team, and you know what, it could just balloon, over the
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. So I guess this kind of touches on, my next question of what your hopes are for the future of workplace mental health. So maybe I'll change that to just, what are your goals for 2022 in terms of the work that you do and the clients that you meet?
I guess my goals are to increase my impact. I've always believed that it was a privilege for me to study with people like Dr. Martin Seligman, Dr. Adam Grant, Angela Duckworth, and I've never taken that opportunity for granted. In fact, as I was going through my master's, I said, gosh, how am I going to bring this all back, back to Singapore? Because obviously it was in the US. And when I do that, what would it mean for people? And I'm always driven by this inner light, inner purpose, and if I can share more of the strategies, I always see myself as a translator as well. So much of the research is very jargonish in psychology. And so many people would say, oh, I don't have time to read through all the jargon. Well, I'm a bit of a nerd, so I love reading all these articles and try to synthesize it into things that we can do on a day-to-day basis and in our context in Asia, right? So I see myself continuing to play that role, but enhancing the impact by really understanding what we are going through as a region, as a person, and then being able to deliver these bespoke and customized solutions that can really meet your needs. We all live 24 hours a day, right? And we can ask ourselves, how do we want to live it? So to me, it gives me great purpose to continue to do that.
Oh,
and
fantastic.
hopefully, people can take it and say like, okay, I'm going to do that one thing, and it's going to help me.
Yeah.
And if I do that to more people this year, then I would say it's a dream come true, right? One.
Oh, fantastic. This is exactly why we do this podcast. I haven't studied psychology. I don't come from that background. And even coming into this, I was just like, oh, like how can we lower the barriers? How can your
Exactly.
everyday ordinary person be more aware of them, for themselves and for the people around them and at the workplace, so that we don't feel, the need, or even just the inadequacy, and just
Yes.
feeling inadequate to deal with this or to have a conversation or, to make a change. So I'm
Yeah.
totally on the same page. Yeah.
Awesome.
Sorry, you were going to say?
No, I was going to say that, and even if you do feel inadequate, I feel like when we talk about mental wellness, there's always this implicit assumption that we must be well all the time, that we must be happy all the time, and for me, I don't believe in that. I think we are here for the whole experience, both the positive and the times in our life that challenge us, right? Because if we didn't go through the challenge, there are things that we won't be able to learn and apply back into our lives. And when we do go through the highs, then let's not discount ourselves. Let's celebrate, like you said. Let's enjoy those moments, right? Because they may not be as easy to come by, depending on the external situation. So I'm saying if you're feeling inadequate, just know, number one, you're not alone. Number two, if you're feeling it's okay to give yourself a little pat on the back and say, yeah, you know what? Yeah, today was not a good day for me, and it's okay, right? Yeah, because otherwise we are denying what is part of our own experience, and that is not mentally healthy to me.
Yes. Because you're just, kind of like burying it and just, pretending, but
Mm,
inside. Yeah. And I think that's why days like Are You Okay? And campaigns like that, overseas is really
exactly.
helpful. And I mean, when I first started work, and this is just an interesting reflection, I found it really interesting how you would walk down the corridors and I'll see someone and they're like, how are you? But you're just like, oh, yes, good, thanks. And you keep walking. And it would happen like
Mm.
multiple times a day. And in my first couple of months of work, and this is back in Australia, I was like, oh, this is a very interesting question, but no one really cared about my answer.
It was almost like hello, right? It was like
Yes,
a,
yeah.
yeah.
And I think now we're a lot more conscious and a lot more, intentional that when you do ask that, to then try and give a response that is actually, how you are really feeling and making time for that. So not as a passing comment, but like, hey, how are you doing? Yeah. So
Yeah,
I
no,
think
I
that,
mean,
go
it's
on.
funny that you brought that up. I was on the receiving end of that. I had my former boss came back to visit. He was posted back, went to another country to work and came back to visit. And the first question he asked me was, "How are you?" And so I just said, "I'm good." And then about 10 minutes later, he stopped and he looked at me and he was like, "Sha-En, I'm really asking, how are you? Like really, like the real person in that inside that smile." And I was just so touched and so at the same time a bit flabbergasted. Like, did he really want to know? Am I free to share how I really feel? But it was such a freeing moment. I felt like he saw through that good, like you said, the good that we tell everyone that we're good. And I think when we come back to workplace as a team leader, that's something that we can do, right? When the person says good, let's pause, acknowledge it, but then let's push a bit, like really, like, how are you? I really want to know. And if we are authentic and genuine, I think it's a profound moment for the person on the receiving end.
I love that. Thank you so much. Well, yeah, I know I have like a million other questions, and I know we can talk. This is what I say about every episode. Because it's just so fascinating, and it's and just the stories, like just the last one of your old boss. It's just just to hear such different approaches, just to even a question like how are you, and really digging in deeper. It's really profound and freeing in a way. To give people permission, and really applying that in every context of a life, in the workplace, when you see old friends down the street, so yeah, would definitely love to have you back. I know you've been podcasted in 2020, but I guess when 2022.
I had a break.
Yeah, the counter resets. But thank you so
Absolutely.
much, and wishing you really all the best in the work that you do this year. Would love to, hear back from you in 6 or 12 months and go, how did it go? What are the great news stories? But what are the challenges still existing that you're encountering all the time? So wishing you a happy Chinese New Year as well. Lots of pineapple tarts that we were talking about.
Time to put on the pounds
I know.
happily.
And after this, it's kind of like, okay, healthy eating. It's like Christmas, New Year's, and then Chinese New Year, and then that's it. But thank you so much. And yeah, just to let everyone know, the Mentally Healthy Workplaces Asia podcast is available on, LinkedIn page, on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So just follow us on Flourish DX as well if you'd like to see a short clip of this conversation. And the video version is available too. So if you want to see our red jackets and our Chinese New Year get up, you can watch us on YouTube. But please connect with Sha-En and myself on LinkedIn to continue the conversation. And thank you for listening in, and stay safe. And we'll, speak to you in the next one. Take care.